Nasrin, welcome to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
You know, that's a big change. NASA engineer to life coach.
It
People must
is.
think you're absolutely insane.
Well, definitely my husband thought that when I told him that I'm going to quit my job. So, yeah, and I'm sure a lot of other people felt the same, but they didn't just mention it.
I mean, I feel like so many kids grow up and we as adults always say like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" They're like, "I want to be an astronaut. I want to be like in space." And you were living that and you still said no to it.
But here's the thing, when I was a kid, that wasn't my dream. My
Mm,
dream was to become a teacher and teach. And I think I do that more now than when I was an engineer, for sure.
that's fair. Well, I guess that begs the question, how did you get into engineering and becoming because that's an aeronautical engineer, right?
Well, I was a software engineer
Okay.
working for NASA, meaning I work on the software that was going to the shuttles, that was going to the thing that they were launching out of
That's a
space.
big job.
Yeah, it was. And it was an exciting job. So how did I get into it? And this is a great segment, I think, to our struggle throughout life, right? I came here when I was 18 to go to college, and literally I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go to community college and figure out in first year what I really want to do and what the major I want to major on. So I did that, but after a year, I was still very confused. I knew something. I really enjoyed my psychology classes, social science classes. That was sort of the classes that I was looking forward to. But I still wasn't sure if that's something I want to do. And here, what limit me, my own limiting belief. Because I was speaking English as a second language, I thought that picking a psychology and becoming a psychiatrist would not be a good pick for me. Although I knew I liked it very much, right? So I wandered into my counselor office. I say, I've been here for a year. I still don't know what do I really want to focus on. And she said, look, we have this test. Why don't you take it and we'll talk after. I took the test and I was naturally very strong in mathematics. Okay. I had the logic. I was good at it. So naturally, I scored very high, but they didn't take the personality test, right? It was just like competency and the level that I was. So the counselor said, well, here's the list that came out of the computer test you take. First one was civil engineer. Second one was software engineer. Third one, mechanical engineer. Engineer, right? I'm like, okay. My brother was a civil engineer. So I said, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the same thing. So I took few classes. Luckily, soon enough, I realized I don't like the drafting. Maybe this is not for me. Okay, I went down to the second one, which was a software engineer.
Process of elimination.
Exactly. Having said that, I was good at math, so I was able to like handle it and eventually, graduate and get a great job. But I remember the very first job that I had, which was with Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is a NASA lab in California. You would think I would be so excited. I was excited getting the job, but the first couple of months, I realized, oh my God, being by myself in front of computer and nobody else drained my energy. I hated it. And all I could think about going back to being a waitress, which I did for 4 years during my university, and how much fun I had because
That's crazy to me.
I was with people that my husband called me social butterfly, but I
Oh,
do get
yes.
energy with being with people. I love connecting. I love talking to them. So soon after that, I realized the part of the job that I loved was that I actually started tutoring other and helping other people to figure things out. I was smart. I was good in logic and math. And just the fact that I had interaction with them and I was teaching something, that would become the highlight of my day. Right.
Right.
So, like, if I would have taken personality test, maybe my counselor will say, you know what, you are smart, you're good in math, but why don't you try to become a psychiatrist? And I would say, hopefully, I don't know, I speak English for second language. And she would say, so what? That shouldn't stop you,
Yeah.
right? But you know how you limit yourself and you're not even aware. That was the first one that I know of that I done big time. But anyway, I had that career. I was in NASA for 10 years. Then I moved to a university for 8 years doing the same thing in the university. But I made great money, so it helped me in a way to invest back in myself and get to know myself. And when life got really tough and I started struggling with my marriage, and I got to
Mhm.
the point that I realized, oh my God, I've done everything that society, my parents told me that if I do, I'm going to be happy. I'm married, I have 2 kids, I have a fancy career, and here I am not happy, right? Like, what is going on? What else am I supposed to do, right, to be happy? And I did start saying, okay, I need my master. And I went back to school for 2 years and got a master, right? Because what we do, we seek our happiness outside of ourselves. We think if we go get another degree, find the ideal relationship, do this, do that, it's going to make us happy. And sure enough, we're happy for a week or two, but we go back to our setting, right? So I did that for a while. I'm like, okay, this is not it. I turn it back. I'm like, okay, it's my marriage for sure, right? And that's something.
And it's definitely him, it's not me.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I was so sure. I'm
It's
like,
never us,
right.
Nazareth.
It's always easier, right, to blame because you're not taking responsibility. It means I don't need to do anything. So, right, for a
You're
first
perfect.
year, right, and it was him, and that's why I don't feel connected to him because he doesn't know how to connect to me anymore. I don't even feel that he says he loves me, but I don't feel that, and blah blah blah. Right. So I went through that route for a year, and I became even more miserable, and I decided to separate.
Oh my god. Okay, let me pause you there. There's
Mhm,
so many avenues that I wanna go down that I think resonates with a vast majority of people. So the first one I wanna ask you about is those limiting beliefs.
mhm.
I've heard this from a lot of people who moved to Canada and the US where English is their second language, and even though they have the skill level, if not more, than someone that speaks English as a first language, that language barrier always stops them from getting the same success they deserve. What do you recommend to someone who's struggling with that limiting the belief, the language barrier?
You know, I'm gonna tell you something. My sister, who was older than me, came to this country, and she is now a very, very successful psychotherapist in California. Why? Because she didn't have that limited belief. She believed
Mm.
she could achieve anything she wanted, and nothing can stop her.
What that
So,
proves to me is you
mhm,
guys were born in the exact same household and upbringing where those beliefs, you create those in yourself, or maybe just like throughout your environment, but it's not as much to do with your upbringing because you guys are coming from the same spot, going to the same spot, but having very different mental outlooks on it all. That's
very,
very interesting to me.
very interesting point, and here why that might happen. When I look back, I had an experience, I think it was in middle school, that my teacher literally made fun of me, right? And interestingly enough, it was on learning a second language. Back there, it was Arabic that I was learning as a second language. And I think now that I think back, the experience that I had, that I felt that I was made fun of and I was not good enough, stay with me to the point that I made that decision because based on that. And not that I was aware of it, that why this happened. But when I started doing the work and start working on my limited belief and all that, if you go back, there's actually a root cause. There was an incident. You got pushback. There was something happened in your childhood to believe that about yourself. I am not good in second language. I cannot master it. Yeah, I'm not good at it, right? And a lot of kids get that experience with math. I didn't have that. I always thought I was good in math and I was
Yeah,
very
one
bad, right?
teacher says like you're not good at math and then they never want to do math ever again.
Exactly.
I mean, all of our main wounds that we deal with as adults come from these small innocent situations as a child, and we make them into be this huge, huge wound. And it was probably a flippant comment from a teacher, a friend on the playground, anything, and it's directed our entire lives since, which is
Mhm.
really scary.
Yeah, yes, it is. But think about it this way. That happening and going through that process and learning about myself unlimitedly now allow me to teach others, to help others,
Agreed.
right? So any experience that we have, if we don't look at it, it was good or bad, it was an experience. As long as we learned our lesson, we're golden.
Agreed. Agreed. Now, another point that you mentioned earlier that I really want to hit on is the playbook that we all play that, okay, I did everything that society told me to do. Why don't I have happiness or success or blah, 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 blah? I think that's a narrative. I don't think, I know that's a narrative that majority of us have played. Okay, I went to college. Okay, I got the boyfriend. Okay, I got the right apartment. Why am I not happy internally? And I think it's until we get all those things that we think makes us happy that we realize like, "Oh, no, happiness comes within." Game changing,
Mhm.
and I'm sure that's what you experienced.
Absolutely. And that's why for most of us, happiness becomes an illusion, right? Because
The
we,
biggest illusion, the
right.
biggest magic trick.
And because we have an if and then model of reality. Like,
I
if
agree.
I get to that college, then I'll be happy. If I get the job, then I'll be happy. If I marry that person, I'll be happy, right? And I continue this cycle. And a lot of us, just like me, get to the point that I did all if and then, and it still didn't get to where I wanted to get, right? Because again, we're searching for that joy and happiness that can only come without.
Mhm. I started yesterday reading the book by Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk. Mind you, I'm like 4 pages in, but the beginning of the book is talking about that the characteristics of a monk versus how we live our lives, and it's all about finding that internal happiness and getting out of that race of more, 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 next, next, next. I have not mastered it. I'm 4 pages in, and I am not implementing anything yet, but I wanna know from your experience, how do we get out of that mindset of thinking, "I will be happy when or if."
So first realize that your whole life is about your journey, is not about the goal that you achieve. Like the journey that you have from where you are and what you're dreaming, who you become in the process is all about that rather than getting that degree, getting that thing that you want, right? So, and then if you think about it, is not that your happiness depends on that goal that you want to achieve, but your happiness is every moment, every minute that you walk in that journey. Who you are, how do you show up, who you becoming as you walk towards that path and your journey, and you focus on every day, every step, little step that you take towards that journey. If you change your focus on that rather than outcome, right, that you're expecting, then you can literally change that. Because if I think about it moment by moment thing, right? How am I showing up in this moment? How do I feel? Stay in my body, right? Am I feeling the joy as I walk through this path, right? If I turn my attention to the moment and be mindful, then my intuition kicks in. Then I would know, what do I need to do next to be in a good place to be able to achieve that? Who do I need to become to go through this journey to achieve that goal? And then we can actually enjoy our journey, right? And we can say eventually, I did achieve all this thing, but the most important thing, I did it such that I found my joy in everyday doing rather than getting so involved just the goal by itself, the outcome itself, that I forgot who I am, who I need to be, and what do I do to really truly connect and enjoy my life as well.
Right. Now, you mentioned before that the struggles in your marriage started when you decided to switch jobs. Give us a play by play of that.
So no, the struggle didn't happen there.
Okay.
The struggle was happening when I figured out that I have all this and I'm not happy. And I was
Ah.
still an engineer, right? And that's when I turned to blame my marriage and I said, okay, I'm just not happy. And after a year of a struggle, I decided to separate.
Mm.
So
How
that's
far
where
along were you in your marriage when you decided to separate?
that was 2013 and we were in 12 years of marriage.
12 years. Any
Yeah.
kids?
Yeah, yeah, we had 2 kids, like, we still have 2 kids, but in
We
2013, there were
didn't get rid of those.
no, there were 7 and 9.
That's always that age, hey?
Yeah, yeah, that's what made it very hard for me.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, this wasn't my first marriage, right? That was my
Mm.
second marriage, but
You did not become an expert in your second one.
no, I had to go through it again to I wouldn't say I'm expert yet
Yeah.
or
But we're
ever.
on the path.
Like, you're right, I'm on the path. I definitely am because now I know it's all me. I need to look within to see why something is not working out instead of blaming others, right? But at that point, what happened was that I decided to separate. But interesting thing that happened that was my husband said something that I thought that he had called my ex because what he said was exactly what I heard from him before I separated. He said, "You tell me that I don't love you, but I have tried so much, you're not willing to receive." And the same thing I heard from my first marriage. He said, "You have a wall, you don't even know that I'm trying to reach you, but you can't even accept it." Right. So that literally stopped me. I'm like, interesting. And I started thinking and I saw the pattern in my relationships, like not even just my marriages, like what I do when I was dating and all of that. I always end up in a feeling, I was feeling disconnected and not loved, right? I have to read this because Rumi has said it so beautiful. And I have it in the beginning of my chapter that I wrote in the book, Voice of 21st Century. But this is sort of says it all, right? Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. I
I got
mean,
a lot of those, Nazrin.
we all do. We all do, and we're not aware of it. That's the thing, right?
Why
So,
though? Where do we created these barriers, we created these walls. What are we so afraid of?
oh, exactly. That's the beautiful question. We are afraid of experiencing this illusion of fear, rejection, not in love, meaning I'm not lovable, right? So my own journey took me to that place of, again, as you were saying, everything happened in childhood. And then we create our own reality based on that as adults, right? I was a middle child feeling invisible, not loved, not even worthy of love. These are the experiences that I had, which were not true in a sense. But because I experienced it, I made meaning out of it, made it true for myself, right? And yet I wasn't fully aware of it. But when
Mm.
I started looking at it and everything that I was told, I wasn't taking compliment very well. Like all this sign later on, I'm like, oh my God, that's so true. I do that. I don't feel like lovable. I don't feel I'm worthy of love. I don't value myself. And what I found in my journey, it wasn't that I was seeking love from others and I couldn't find it, right? It was that I was seeking to love myself and I wasn't.
I mean, if you can't love yourself, how do you expect anyone else to, right?
You can't even receive it. And that was the thing. People were trying to give it to me. I wasn't able to receive it. And that's the part that is tough for some people to understand. The things you want the most and you keep bumping against it are the things you don't give yourself. right? That love, that respect, that value, right? And then you seek it again, like happiness outside of yourself, not knowing that you can't even receive it if you don't have it and you don't give it and you don't create that within.
And if you have the limiting belief of I'm unlovable, and then you set up a scenario where your partner approves that, whereas it's really your problem, but then you're allowed to say, "See, I'm right. I'm unlovable." And
You
it
know,
goes
I love what you
over and
said.
over and over again.
I love what you said because you nailed it. You're the one who create that scenario.
You attracted it in.
You unknowingly, right? And I think the reason is we want to feel the pain, the burn enough to do something about it eventually,
We always
right?
wanna be right as humans. The ego is beyond.
Absolutely. And what is familiar, even though that familiar thing is not what we desire, is most comfortable, right? If we have grown up feeling unloved, believing we are not worthy of it, we're not enough, being in a relationship that prove ourselves that that's right, that's our feeling are in a way are being met because that's how we feel comfortable, it feels familiar to us, right? But opposite of that, it actually would trigger us and we will not be able to receive it. And I think until we get to the root cause and heal that, continuously gonna experience the same experience. And I was if we look back in our life, it's not even just in our intimate relationship. I talk to people like, yeah, I do feel the same thing at work. I feel like I'm always left out. I feel ignored, right? The same feeling that she has in her intimate relationship. So then if you think about it, is it coincidence or is it I am the one who keep creating that wherever I go? Yeah. So that's exactly what at the end I thought, oh my God, like looking back, I saw a pattern and I said, wow, they were actually the guys I was with, they were not even from the same country, different culture. The only common denominator was me. So it must be, right? That I am the one. But and the feeling that you get at first, at least that's how I felt. Oh my God, I did that to myself. Why? And it felt bad, right? At the beginning. But then soon after, I realized, well, if I created that unknowingly, what could I create now? Conscious, right? And that's where
Mm.
the power that you have come to play.
People always forget that we create our own reality. It's so woo-woo, but it's so true. There's so much power within us that we do not realize, and it's funny, that's where we delegate in our life. We're waiting like you said, you waited for a counselor to tell you, "You're better as an engineer," even though you knew internally, you're like, "That's not the route I wanna go." We're always waiting for people to validate us and point us in directions when it's like, we know best.
We don't trust our own instinct, right? And intuition,
Ever.
right?
We always look for what other people think. And then when we choose that path they told us to, and then we know the whole time it's not the right path, that we're only poisoning ourselves.
Right.
But we get mad at the other person.
Right. Yeah. And
Wow, we're all so toxic.
but I think life is a journey, and as we learn and we evolve in a way to a different level, we're gonna always have other things that challenge us in life. But the most important thing is, as you said, if you realize the power within, that you're in charge, literally. You don't have to react to life. You can be conscious and take action and create what you want, right? And when you get to that part that you feel the power within, then you can do anything. You become not as like literally you have that resilience, that knowing life by just the way it is, challenge is gonna always come, but you know within you have that sense of well-being that no matter what's happening around you, you're gonna be fine and you're gonna figure it out and you're gonna move forward.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that separation that you went through. So you're 12 years of marriage and you think the cure is to separate for a bit. How did that discussion go? What's the plan? You're going in being like, "Hey, let's just separate for a year." That's an interesting conversation to have. But yet
Mhm,
you're happy and you're married now.
mhm.
So, I mean, was it a shock to your husband when you were saying, "Let's just take some time apart"? How did that affect your family?
Yeah, we actually openly talked about different options. Like
Okay, what were the options?
like literally have open marriage, stay in the same house, but become roommates, get divorced and get our own place and figure out the kids. All of this were on the table. The
When
only
you look back at those options, do you laugh at yourself now? Because it's still finding happiness outside of yourself. Having an open marriage, that's not solving anything between you 2 or especially not within.
right. And but here's the thing: at that point, I was in a
Because you
point.
thought he was the problem.
He was there. Not only that, I was so confused, right? And I think that is a great place to be. When people say I'm confused, I say congratulations.
Why?
Because because until you become confused, you do not become curious enough to go look within to
Mm.
figure out what's going on, right? And when I became very confused because I'm like, look, I did everything that I thought I was supposed to do, meaning others told me it didn't work out. Then what else do I need to do? I became confused about what didn't I see? What else I was supposed to do that I didn't do, right? And I had all this confusion within me, right? That's when I actually turned to yoga and meditation. And that's when things start changing. That was the first step I took. I had a lot of anxiety and stress, as you can imagine. I was trying to decide what to do next. I had 2 young kids. I was very concerned. So I turned to yoga. The reason that I did that, I just wanted to manage my stress. I wasn't sleeping well. I had this voice within me that constantly chattering. And when I started doing yoga, I fell in love with it because
And you never did yoga or anything before that?
no,
Wow.
no, it was very first time doing it.
Wow.
Literally, the first practice that I had, I fell in love with it. I'm like, "Oh
I
my
bet.
god." It made me feel so good, right? That night I slept well, and I went back the next day. The next day, I started literally breaking down on my mat, literally, like I was doing hip opening things, and that's where
Yep.
you
Yeah,
hold
you're
on
opening
to
your
emotion
chakras.
and
Yeah.
all that, and I would just sob, and then my yoga teacher would just come quietly. I'm okay. I was just
You're like, "I don't
relieved.
know, but we'll figure it out."
Just release, right? So, and that turned to practice of meditation and being able to quiet my mind. And that's when I started hearing my intuition. My intuition told me, hold on, because my husband and I both were seeing lawyers at that point to get divorced, like getting our paperwork together. Said, hold on, don't rush into this. It's not the right decision, at least not yet,
Mm.
right? So the day that I was supposed to meet my husband, we would meet outside because we didn't want to fight anymore, right? We went to a coffee shop to literally sign documents for legal separation. So in Virginia, you have to, if your parents, you have to be separated legally for a year before you can do the divorce part.
Interesting. I think that's a
Right.
good law.
So we met to sign. And at that point, I said, what if we don't sign it? What if we give each other a chance to get to know ourselves and just see what we truly want? I'm very confused and I don't know what I want. I don't know how I got here. I'd really like to figure this out before making this big decision. And he said, that's great. I'm all for it. So for next 2 years, we lived in the same house as a roommate while I was going through my journey to figure this thing out. I became a yoga instructor because I loved it so much and I wanted to learn more. I hired my own coach. Then that turned to realization that I have a lot of childhood trauma and I have beliefs that is based on that and I need a deeper healing. Then I went to hypnotherapy, energy healing, and all of it. And what I learned in the process transformed my life. Literally, after that journey, I was still married to the same man. We got back together, same job as an engineer, same household. Everything was the same, but nothing was the same because I was not the same person.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was all inner work And, when I was doing this work, I went in saying, okay, you know what? I'm confused. I'm not sure. I just want to do this work to make sure I'm doing the right thing. I didn't expect so much change within me that I start seeing things different, right? And the amazing part was, as I was going through this journey, I was the one who was doing the work. My husband had started changing around. He was acting different. And here's why, because my energy was changing.
Mhm.
One of the practices that I was doing was writing gratitude journal every morning. But part of that was my coach told me I have to write 3 things I love about my husband that I was separated every morning. And it cannot be the same the next day, right?
Oh my goodness.
I know it's a fantastic practice, and here why. At the beginning, it wasn't too hard. I said, okay, he's a great father. He takes my kids to soccer practice, he show up for the kids. But after the first week, I was done seeing his greatness for others. I had to like take it back.
Mhm.
And I said, and I realized, oh yeah, he's very responsible. He always does the dishes. I don't like to do dishes. I don't touch dishes.
Me either, Nasrin. Find me
Yeah,
someone like your husband.
yeah,
I need that in my marriage vows. You vow to
yes.
wash the dishes every single night. I'm in.
Yeah, but I love to cook, so it
Me
was a good
too.
trade-off, right? So I cook, and he always say, "You're like a chef. You make a lot of mess, but I have to clean up after you."
Yeah,
So I'm like, "Okay." He always does that. He never complains. He's responsible. And then I keep writing, and I saw more. What you focus on expand. All
agreed.
of a sudden, I start seeing all this great quality within him that I never noticed. Now, what happened was automatically, without me knowing, I started really appreciating him, meaning my language changed towards him. I would appreciate and say it, things that I never done before and I wasn't aware of. And one day he said, it's funny. All this year that we've been married, I've never felt you appreciate me like you doing now that we're not together.
That'll mess with your psyche a bit.
Oh, yeah. Right? So it's like as I was doing that, I was opening my energy. And his language of love is actually appreciation.
And
And
words of
yeah,
affirmation. Mine
yeah,
too.
exactly. Mine is not. Mine is touching, and like I want to be
Mm.
touched, hold, and that powerful love. His is just needs to hear it, right?
Yep.
And I was doing that unknowingly, and he started like really even feeling more love towards me because now I'm opening up, right, in a way. And when I was going through my inner child healing and healing myself, now I became a person who was able to receive love. So then when I would get a gesture of love, it was so open that he really started like literally feeling different, acting different. And all of this, one day we said, what the hell are we doing? We want to be together. Let's get back together. Right?
It's like you're in love again right at the beginning.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Mm.
But I have to say this, that's why it took 2 years. It took a lot of forgiveness myself and what I thought he did. Like nobody is like it takes two to tango. There
It
was
does.
things that he was doing that harming the marriage as much as I was doing, right? But getting to
Well,
that
you're
point,
feeding off each other.
right.
And you're doing something negative, more negative is gonna come. When you were changing your ways and doing something a little bit more positive and more appreciation, the appreciation love was coming your way again.
Yes, absolutely. And here's what I learned, and I know that now being a coach, when I work with women who just the very first session that we have, I see their greatness, I see their potential, and I already see them successful in whatever they want to achieve. And that opens so much for them, holding that a space for them. If we all do that in our intimate relationship, you really can make a huge positive change in how that person is doing. Like, see them as the person, their higher self, right? See them in that and give them that a space and see how things change. Because most of the time, our focus is on how we judge them, how they're imperfect, what are they doing wrong? the way they're eating that we don't like, the way they're talking that, whatever that might be, right?
Like I said earlier, we're perfect and no one else is.
Exactly. Right?
We have
And
no bad qualities.
yeah. But here's the thing, especially if you have kids, that's the other thing, right? Are we focused on how they're, as an individual, see their greatness and potential, or we're focusing on they're getting B's and C and they're not doing something, right? That defines how they're going to act. That
Agreed.
defines how they're going to succeed in life. Is the same thing in a relationship. Where is your focus? What you focus on, you create more of. And most of us, not only in our relationship, we are just focused, our brain is set right that way, that focus on what we don't want. And by law of nature, that's the law of attraction. What you focus on, literally, you're creating more of the same experience. And I do understand people say, hey, but that's my reality. But I'm like, okay, but that's going to continue being your reality if you stay there. So the whole paradigm needs to change. Knowing
Agreed.
that you create your own reality, you need to come up with the best scenario you want to create in your life, the best relationship, the best career, whatever that is ideal for you. And then you need to get already in the feeling place of having that, meaning you are being that person who already create that. So you ask yourself, who do I need to be? For me was, I need to be a person who can receive love, meaning I need to be a person who love herself and respect herself and value herself, right? So I had to literally become that, and then voila, magically that reality appeared in front of.
People who aren't used to the idea of manifesting a law of attraction, they think we're crazy right now. They think we're totally insane the way we're talking. And I think everyone before they get into that type of world and that type of mindset thinks it's all crazy. And then they realize the truth and the reality of it that very much possible to have whatever you want. And it really is a mindset shift. It's an energy shift. It's attracting what you want. It's being before having. Yeah,
Yeah, because most of us are in the victim mentality, victim
of course.
consciousness. Like
Lots of
life,
attention comes from that.
right? Life is happening to us, or
Mhm.
instead of life is happening for me, right?
Agreed.
You co-creating your own reality as things are happening. You have a lot of power. Then if you take responsibility, then you can blame. That might be a little bit tough at the beginning.
Yes. A lot of people don't wanna own their own shit.
Right. Yeah. And but the thing is, if you look at the pattern of your life and be honest with yourself, you realize how you have created that. There are no coincidences,
Mm.
right?
Good and the bad.
Like it's not only a relationship. Look at your pattern in your career. If you constantly changing job and you're finding yourself in the same place, unsatisfied, not getting along with the boss or whatever, think, could it be you?
No, it's definitely not me.
Right? So, but what I'm saying is,
Feel like I'm, like, hearing an echo where I'm like, "Are you talking to me, Nazrin, or just the greater, like, society?"
I am talking to all of us. I'm even talking to myself.
I know.
You know,
You're seeing right through me.
what I love, Lisa Nickel, which I had a mentorship with her for 6 months. She said is like, your mess is your message.
Amen.
So if we decide that we're done being a victim, we want to take our power back, that's when we can create a life we truly want, not before that. Nobody can do it for us. And that's the bottom. You can pay all you want for someone, even you can pay a coach. But if you're not willing to do the practices and do the things you need to do, nothing going to change. If it's like I pay a gym membership, but I don't show up, would I see anything different? No.
I know. I want to ask you from your perspective, what was both your husband's and your kids' experience through all of this? Like in their words.
Yeah. when it comes to my kids, the importance of self-care, doing your work, and especially women, we all feel guilty because we're taking time for ourselves. But one day, my son, after this was all done and we're back together and we could feel it. Kids are so smart. Although we never officially sat down and telling them that we want to get divorced,
They
they
know
can
what's going
tell.
on.
They know exactly
They're
what's going on.
sponges.
Right, right. I mean, that's because they haven't been corrupted yet. They're
Exactly. They still
very
have their intuition.
right. They're very in tune and they pick up energy and all of that. So they know. But after this was done and we just got back together, my son, who was 9 year old at that point, my youngest, he literally looked at me, looked deep into my eye, and said, "Mom, I love the way you are now. Please don't go back the way you used to." That literally broke my heart at the same time as I saw their joy within the way I used to be impatient, not fully present. I was physically there, but I was not having a quality connection with them. And now the person who I became was person who actually honored myself, took care of myself so I could be fully present for my kid. I could be fully present in my marriage, right? And that's so important because I talk to a lot of women and we just give and give and give and we feel guilty for taking for ourselves. But what I learned in my process, in my journey is you have to give yourself first to be able to fully show up. And
Mhm.
all my
So hard as women.
relationship, right? All my relationship changed for better. They became deeper. I created a lot more joy by giving myself first, creating that connection with myself first, giving myself that time to grow and investing in myself. So that was my kid. So
Yeah, let's hear about your husband.
my husband totally, and I want to be fully transparent and honest. Where we are right now, we're going through another change together, right?
What's that
Now,
change?
and the change is I'm not the same person, right? Like I was an engineer, he's a scientist. We thought the same way. If I would hear this conversation with who I was 6, 7 years ago, would walk away and would not listen to this. You're creating your own reality. Everything is illusion. You can manifest it, blah, blah, right? I was that person. Woo woo, get out of here,
Yeah.
right?
There's no rationality and logic around this.
And here's the interesting part that I was an atheist. I became very spiritual. I still do not believe in any religion, and I feel like religion divides, but spirituality unites. That's what I love about
Completely
the
agree.
spirituality. And I don't even believe in the traditional, what most people think God is sitting up there judging you, heaven and hell. None of
Agreed.
that, right? But I do believe in a higher power in a sense of we all in it together. There's a higher field of consciousness that we are all part of it. We're not separated. There is the illusion of separation, but there is no such a thing, right? And everything is energy. Everything, even though we feel this physical body in a cellular level, everything is energy, right? So we create based on that energy. Whereas your focus and attention is meaning you put in energy on.
Mhm.
What you put on energy on is something that you create. So my husband, being a scientist and thinking some of these are woo-woo, although
Mm.
I have to say, I started myself studying a lot of quantum physics that now prove a lot of these things that we cannot really prove, like it's hard to believe in a way. That there is the reasoning behind it if you go deep in quantum physics and explaining it. But our path, in a way, I started going more and more towards the spirituality and seeing things different. And he is still in that mindset that if he cannot see it and prove it in his lab, it doesn't exist.
So there's a lot of resistance,
Yes.
even though he sees all the changes in you.
Well, he loves that part. He even asked me, like, he wants to learn more how I did it, but he doesn't want it at all have anything to do to. And I explained to him that this is not religion.
Yeah, it's not mutually exclusive. Like
Exactly.
they're all the same.
Yes. I do understand because I used to be there,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You're
Uh,
like, "Come with me, let me show you the lights."
but here's the thing, you cannot do that. And that's what I learned. And
Yeah.
I learned and I needed to put a stop in it. I wanted him to come with me. I'm like, oh, let's watch this talk together. It's so great. And I would see his face getting a little bit like, oh, wow, what is the hell talking about? Manifestation, creating your reality, like, right?
Like,
All
the
of this.
more you want him to do it, the more resistance he's gonna have.
Exactly.
You
So
need to let them just see the difference in you and want it for themselves.
and it's his own journey that he needs to walk through. I cannot do it for him. I can be the change that he would say that I love that, right? And that did happen to the point. One day, and this was still when we were separated, he told me, I see a change in you. You used to be very stressed, the way you talk, you're much calmer. I don't see the stress on you. Like, if you're not having an affair, which I said I am not. What is it that you're doing that, you know
It's making you so happy.
exactly. And
Like,
I said, well, if you really need to know, I tell you what it is. It's the meditation that I do every day. So it sort of made him start thinking. But one day he showed up with a scientific paper in his hand. And he said, Naz, I got this scientific paper that is about why meditation changes things in the
yep,
brain and causes you to less stress, less anxiety, better sleep and all that. I smiled and I said, that's great. I don't need that paper because I experienced it, but you definitely would enjoy reading because he needs
interesting.
science
True,
backing why, right?
right.
And I always tell this to my client, don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody's word for it, right?
Go experience it yourself.
Experience it yourself. Like my husband asked me, how do you know? I'm like, I just know because I experienced it. I cannot tell you I know because so and so proved that it did happen this way and that's why I can just tell you my experience. So we have those challenges now for us coming out and we are talking through it. And I did wonder, I still wonder now that spirituality has become a big part of my life and is something that I truly enjoy learning more, going deeper. And I have to do it by myself. I either have to be
Yeah.
okay thinking I'm going to go retreat for a week, but I'm just going to be alone. He's not joining, right?
As
I'm
much
going
as
to,
it hurts you, you know deep down you gotta go do it for you.
right. I'm going to go to this conference, but I know he's not going to enjoy it. So I'm going to do it by myself, right? It has to be to the point that we mutually have this deep respect for each other, that trust and letting go. That it doesn't matter how far I go in this path, I'm still gonna love him, honor him, and respect him for his mind the way he is. And he needs to do that the same for me.
Do you think he'll eventually come down your path? Slower, maybe, on his own time? The fact that he found a
Right.
scientific paper and brought it back to you, like, it's on his mind. I think that's a great sign.
And I love the fact that he is looking for evidence. Like,
I agree because he wants to believe what you believe, but he wants to do it in a way that
right,
makes sense to him.
exactly, exactly.
I think that's
Yeah.
admirable. He wants to make you happy, but he also wants to stick to what he
Right,
knows too.
right. But I do see that if we don't get to that place that will be willing to let go of the other person and grow the way that person wants to grow, we still get together, right? Because here's what I am bumping against. I have so many experiences that I would love to run to a friend that was in my journey to say, this is what I experienced. This is what I learned. This is what I noticed. I cannot do that with him because,
Are you okay with that?
when you ask me what am I struggling with right now, is
That
that level because, as you grow and you change, your needs and what you want also grow and change and evolve,
I
right?
agree.
So the level of connection and going deep with someone is so important to me now. And who's better than your partner that do that with if that person is willing and if it's the same path? But we're not in the same path anymore.
I think that's okay, and this is a very small version of that, but I know for me, I'm a very outdoorsy person. Like, the moment I wake up, I wanna go for a walk, I wanna go play tennis, I want to go swimming, I wanna be on adventures all the time. My partner is not like that at all, and it was a big point of contention for me, still is, but not as much. The way I looked at it was these are things that I'm grateful that I can go do those either by myself or with girlfriends. So it allows me to have a time and an activity that there's someone else I could build a connection with, whether it's my girlfriends or I can go for a walk with them or go do those things with. And once I switched my mindset about that, where I was like, no, this is a benefit, it doesn't bother me anymore. Obviously yours is a lot bigger. You're married, it's a bigger point of contention, but I don't think your partner needs to be everything for you. I really genuinely don't. I
Yeah,
think
I
I'd
agree.
rather them not be,
No, the thing is they cannot be. That's
but you
putting
want them to be growing and evolving with you at the same
right,
time.
right. That's putting too much pressure on anybody that if you
I
think that
agree.
one person can or
Be
not
everything.
supposed to be everything for you. And I don't expect that, right? But the thing is this is big part of my life, right?
I think
And
he's going to go down that path with you. I think so. Maybe not as
yeah,
quick as you want and to the level you want,
mhm,
but he's
yeah,
starting a lot later than you. I
yeah.
don't think you can expect him to be at the level that you're at now.
Yeah, and I was able and lucky enough to be able to give myself that time and dedicate my time, and then get to this point, right? So I don't expect anybody jump, in a way that you need to do your own inner work to be able to move to the next level, right? But at the same time, it's great to have this conversation because as we're talking, I'm thinking, I'm gonna hold a space for him the same I hold for my client
Exactly.
that seeing the higher self, the potential within, and see him in that light so I can literally energetically help him to move a little bit towards baby steps. But truly, I feel like when you do this work and when you pass the initial hurdle, you find so much joy, fulfillment in life that you keep want to go in
I
because you
believe it.
want to see the wow, what's next, right? But the initial hurdle is that we are our own worst enemy, right? We
Yes.
limit ourselves and we're not willing to openly become impersonal in a way,
Yeah.
right? Let go of our ego and say, okay, maybe there's another way I can look at this. Maybe there's things that I don't see. And when you do that, that's when possibility happens, right? They say in quantum field, there's infinite possibility of you,
Mm.
right? There's a version of you who stays where she is and limit herself and or her life plans and blah blah. There's a version of you that has passed all that and achieved her highest self and goals and full of joy and fulfillment in life. And there is so many versions of you in between, right? It's up to you which one you're gonna reach. But
Mhm.
there's all that option open to you. And one thing we all have is freedom and
And
choices,
choice. Yeah.
right? And every choice that we make along the way, in a way, help us to get to a different path. But it's never too late. The choices are always there for us to take. And it's just matter of how bad you want to change your life for better.
Yeah, seriously. I want to ask you a couple more final questions before I let you go. First question is, do you think, and this is really woo woo, do you think the universe already has a set path and destiny laid out for us? And we're just constantly just going different paths to finally get to that last one? Like, I think we were each brought onto this earth to fulfill something or a destiny, and all of these ups and downs and roller coasters of life is on our way there.
What about if I go even more woo woo and say, that's true eventually, but you might not achieve it all in this lifetime. And you pick it up
Ah,
in your next until your final destination is self actualization.
shit, hey?
Yeah.
That's another level that my brain is not ready for. Another question I have for the audience, what is a book or some kind of resource that you'd recommend to someone if they were starting on this path of quantum physics or spirituality, that kind of thing? What's like an easier step into this world for whether a book or a podcast or anything?
There are a lot of great podcasts out there in self-development, and I would not pick for anybody because it's all depend where you're at in life, that it might make sense to you or not. But, there are great books out there. One is The Four Agreements. So that's one that literally, as I was reading it, I experienced myself watching myself reading that book. Took me to
We're like outside of yourself.
right, right. That
Okay.
it took me to a deep place for some reason. So that's that. And there are two books, my favorite from Michael Singer, which one is his own experience in life and how he ended up surrender to create the life that he wanted. And his journey also, he had a PhD, getting PhD in the economy. And one day he realized he had all this chatter and got curious why he's not shutting up, why is it so negative? And then it took him to yoga and like literally like started his path that way as well. And he has two books that are my favorite. One, Surrender Experience, which is his story, how to change his life. And second one, Untethered Soul.
Familiar.
Yeah. And just quickly, since you mentioned, I just
Yes,
had a little
please plug your own
chapter.
before we go.
Yeah,
So Voices of the 21st Century. When did you publish that?
this was 2 years ago, and
Nice.
it's a co-author. This there are many other stories from different women in this book, and it's called "Bold, Brave, and Brilliant Women Who Make a Difference."
Mm,
So,
love it.
yeah, I have a small chapter in there. But if you go to my website,
Mm.
Pathway to Lasting Joy, you can also get a free PDF version of my version.
Oh, amazing. I'll definitely put that in the show notes. Nazarene, this has been a pleasure. The pleasure is literally all of mine. I feel like we just had a very beautiful conversation that it doesn't matter where you are in life, what age you are, what stage of life you're in, every message that you said today will resonate. So I want to
Thank
thank you for
you.
your time. It's been so good.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. This is what I love to talk about and I'm passionate about. So it was my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate your time and all the audience who are listening to this.